Hey everyone, welcome to another YouTube Live here. So we're going to talk about BTC as well as a couple alts that we're currently in, as well as a potential opportunity for a short if it does actually play out. Litecoin absolutely bombed. We did have a potential short just around here, but unfortunately it did break the resistance and just shot up massively soon after. So now we're looking at BNB for a potential short if it does actually come through, and we'll talk about why when we get to it. So first off, let's talk about Bitcoin because that is the king, and we like to really understand the price action of BTC before moving on to any other alts. So overall, we've been in a very tight consolidation. We got a massive wick to the downside recently, but it does look like the buyers are still stepping up, pushing the pressure from the buyers from the demand zone up to the price, not letting it go below a key zone. But overall, definitely there is a lot of sell pressure around the $9,400 resistance. But from the looks of it on the hour chart, we haven't closed yet. We still got a little over 10 minutes until this candle closes. But overall, we're seeing a lot of both buy and sell pressure coming from the top and bottom, squeezing the price within a tight consolidation. So let's go back all the way from the weekly chart and do a top-down technical analysis approach to actually really get a good understanding of what we're able to identify on the price action of BTC. So initially looking at the weekly, we can clearly see that we are at a key zone of resistance and support. So it's a zone of sensitivity, which means that on the way up, we're going to have a lot of sensitivity to the downside. And then if we break and then come from the way down, we're going to have a lot of sensitivity coming from the upside. It doesn't mean that we will have a guarantee that we're going to bounce or reject. It just means that there is going to be a lot of buyers and sellers within the market. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now because the price is right at the key zone. You can see around 94, it was a previous level of support and resistance here. So it's going to be a key level on the chart that we need to identify. And we have, so now that we know the bigger aspect of the time frame, we can then move to the more detailed daily chart. But just looking over real quick, we are right at a key level of resistance and we're seeing a lot of sell pressure entering the market. Overall, the momentum is still to the upside, but I would not be too surprised if we do get some hesitation in a pullback here because it's a major zone on the chart. We've been doing pretty well from the break of the $7,800 zone, but it hasn't been straight up. We've had a week of consolidation, and this is our next push to the upside. But overall, I do think that this key level on the chart is going to be a pretty tough one to pass. Now going on to the daily, we can see that we've been seeing a lot more buy volume on the way up compared to the sell volume. Overall, still looks pretty healthy on the daily chart, although we have made a new high right at the zone there. And this is the completion of the 5 waves there. Let's just talk about that right now for 1 second. So we see the first wave, we see the second wave, and we see the third wave. And then this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern. So I think at this point in time, the sellers are definitely looking like they could be in control. But saying that, I do have exposure to the long side way more than the short side at this point in time. But if I do get stopped out on my trades, I will definitely think a little bit more bearish. I did get in Litecoin short on, but unfortunately it didn't actually go through. We only waited for one confirmation of a bounce on a zone of confluence. Theoretically, if we look back, could have waited for two bounces on the zone of confluence, but we only waited for one. It was a feeler trade, so it wasn't a full position, but regardless, I think being a little bit more patient would have been the ideal situation in that particular trade. But overall, no worries. We're going to just keep on going, keep on trading, taking good setups, and then trying to leave everything else. So not much more to talk about on the daily chart. We're not seeing a huge amount of a pullback consolidation yet, so we don't want to really break this section down. We've already broken this whole section quite extensively when we were in that consolidation. Previous resistance, new support, and then now our new support is going to be around the 9K zone. If we pull back to that area, that's not a problem. On the hour chart, we're already seeing the price pull back to the $9,100 area, as we can see right here. We got a very, very strong pullback to the downside, but as we can see within this candle, the bulls are present. They are putting pressure, keeping the price close to that consolidation zone of around 9,400 all the way to the $9,200 area, and we've been in a very, very tight consolidation from this point onward. So taking it now to the daily chart, we see that within this current daily candle, which still has 7 minutes on it, we see that there is a ton of volatility, both from the buyers and sellers, pushing the price in its desired direction. Bears obviously going to the downside, with bulls coming up to the upside. We're seeing a ton of a volume in terms of this single hour, but looking at the transactions, and it will depend heavily on what this actually closes at, because right now it's looking like a doji candle, meaning it's an indecision in the market where both buyers and sellers kind of even out, and it could play out as a potential catalyst for the upcoming move here, because we've been in this consolidation for about 2 days now. So not a whole lot more to talk about within the price action of BTC. Just zooming back a little bit, we see that it was a key zone of resistance initially, and then we did drop, and then this is our nice cup and handle, where this is now the handle of the cup and handle. And we already talked about what we could see in a cup and handle, and it has turned out to be a significant analysis when we were actually maybe around here or here. We were talking about a zone of consolidation at the top resistance, above the resistance like this, or below the resistance, but we were looking for a consolidation, and that's exactly what we got to initially push us above the $9,100 area right here. So we got the cup, and this was the handle below the zone where we got a tight consolidation below the resistance, and then once we made our huge impulse move above it, now we are just consolidating above our key zone. So overall, the momentum is still to the upside, the overall trend is still to the upside, and the confidence is still within the bulls, because we've broken a resistance here, and we've now held it as a new level of support. We saw on this, we don't actually know because the hour chart or hour candle is still not closed, but if this does close relatively similar to where it is now or even higher, it really signifies that there is a lot of bulls around the $9,200, $9,100 new level of support, and people are looking to buy when the price dips around to that area. So overall, we're seeing a lot of buy pressure within the support there, and that's looking still like a pretty good cup and handle, although we do have to keep in mind the overarching resistance that we do have on the bigger time frames. But I think that we could still see some bullish action to come in the upcoming week here. And then on the 4 hour, I just showed the minor levels of resistance that we could have on the Bitfinex chart. We don't see them on the daily candles or the daily time frame, but if I were to draw them, I would draw them here, I would draw that here, and I potentially have one right here as well. So just talking about the minor term time frames on the 4 hour, but I'm not going to actually put them on the daily time frame because it looks a little bit too messy. There's too many horizontal lines, and I like to keep the daily candles very clean, very easy to read, and easily identifiable. If I am actually making any lines within the more recent time frames, I'll just use a horizontal zone, and then like that, as we can see, expected zone throughout the chart. But before we even lay down any key zones, we're going to test it to make sure that it's actually been a key zone in the past already. So definitely something to keep in mind if you are doing your technical analysis. But overall, that's my outlook on BTC. Looks like there's a lot of buy volume in the market right now, although the current sellers are still pretty strong. I think that there's an indecision. With that said, I do have long positions open. So now let's talk about those long positions that are open for me. And let's just make that a little bit easier to see. We still have 3 minutes left on the 1 hour chart, but that is a big indecision in the market. Definitely a lot of sell volume within the resistance, but then also seeing a lot of buy volume pushing the price right back up. But overall, there's a lot of volatility within that hour, and we basically put on our trade before this candle, And let's just quickly go over the 3 trades that we're currently in, all long. And then I'm looking at BNB as my hedge for a short if we are able to see the price gain a little bit more bearish volume for BNB paired with USDT, so it breaks the ascending trend line. So let's actually talk about our short first, and then we'll go into the current longs that we have open. So the reason why we want to short this trend line is not too relevant. It's more or less the horizontal zones that we want to really make sure that we're sticking below. So this is a very, very well-respected resistance zone. We see it all along here act as a key level of supply. This is going to be the supply zone that we're going to use. We have an ascending support, which is going to be our demand zone, squeezing the price towards the apex, which is right here. What we're looking for is the price to break this ascending support in order for us to identify a potential shift in trend. Once that occurs, we can then look to enter on a pullback, creating a lower high. So when we have a pullback, we'll look for a key zone horizontally. It will create a lower high. We're looking for the lower high before the price pushes down to our key level of demand. And if the momentum continues, we will see a break, a potential retest, and then the next move to our first and second stop or support areas, which are going to be take profit zones. It was broke, retested, gained a lot of sell volume coming in, and then I looked to enter. And then it just could not hold it, could not actually continue its downward momentum. But that's just how it goes. Can't win all of them. And now we're looking at BNB for that same downside exposure. So now that we talked about the potential trade that we're going to enter if this bearish momentum continues, but we basically have closed the 1 hour candle now, and that is a huge doji candle, a major indecision in the market. So now let's talk about ETC and why we entered this pair. So we're going to quickly go over them and discuss why we entered it so you guys can really understand where our trades come from, I guess, would be a best way to put it. So looking at the mid-range zone, that's the key area that we want to be identifying, because then we know why we're using it as a potential support, so then we can risk off of it and then try to capture some profits. So this is the mid-range zone that we're risking off of. We can see it was a previous level of support, resistance, resistance, resistance. So we can identify that's a key zone on the chart. And then our take profit zone is going to be a resistance, resistance, support, support. So it's also a key zone on the chart. So we're going from one range to another basically. And that's the simple way of looking at the current structure of the overarching trade. And then once we go into the smaller time frames, we can see that we have a confirmation of bullish pressure, or bullish the bulls injecting orders into the market. So we got one injection right here of the bulls putting money into the market, buying up the pair. And then we got a second level right there, which is the second confirmation of the bullish pressure entering the market. So we have two confirmations. The candles closed green, the candles stuck above a key level of support, and we know that there is bulls within the area, keeping the price above our major zone. So we have two confirmations on the 4 hour chart that there is bullish pressure within the market. And then looking on the hour chart, then we're looking for that very, very specific entry, and that's exactly what we got. So we're getting a lot of bullish pressure keeping the price up. We see 1, 2, 3, 3 touches of a key level of support. So that is going to validate that we have an area of support that buyers are buying at. The second thing we looked at is the descending trend line. We see that all right here. We see 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch, and then we see a 4th touch, validating it as a new level of support before seeing a little impulse move to the upside. Unfortunately, we could not break the resistance, but just by looking at 1, 2, 3, and then a 4 validating the support, we can see and safely assume that this trend line is going to be a valid area of support. Now, because we see this horizontal zone act as a support and this descending zone act as a support, this is a double confirmation support bounce. It's a zone where we know that there is not just one level of confirmation at the horizontal zone, but we also have the descending zone, which got respected 4 times, which is going to give us a validation that there's potentially going to be buyers at this area. We didn't enter right when we saw the price enter this area. We wanted to see some bullish indications before we actually opened our trade, and that's what we were waiting for, and that's what we got after this candle right here closed green. Once that occurred, we then jumped in because we see the bulls pushing the price up above the open where the full candle was looking more bearish at one point in time because the distance from the open was more towards the downside than upside, but we did close above the open, which is an indication of bullish pressure. And then we entered there, and that's where our current trade is, with our stop loss below the previous low. And then we have a double confirmation of a descending trend line now used as a support, and a horizontal zone as also a support. And then my first take profit is at 2, and then we have take profits at 3.9 and 4.35 ish as risk rewards. So then I'm averaging well over 3, which is somewhere where we'd like to be. So that's the overall look of ETC and why I entered it. Now talking about the different coins here that we've entered, TRX as well as EOS. So let's talk about TRX first, and then we'll go with EOS. So this is a very, very similar structure to the current or the previous trade that we talked about with Ethereum Classic. Very similar structure overall, similar look to the chart here. So let's just zoom out a little bit so you can really identify the key zones that we're working with. Actually, let's even go to the major double bottom, because that is what we're really looking for in terms of the extension to reach the top of the zone. So we can see a big double bottom here, so double bottom like so, and then this is the middle of the zone, so we're trying to reach this area within the chart. That's the overall outlook of Tron, and that's why we're entering long. Now that we understand that section, we can then discuss why we entered at this particular area on the chart. So we see a key level of resistance, double top all here, key level of a rejection zone of supply, support, 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 and then it absolutely nosedived below that zone, and then we see a support, support, support all along here. So we can see and identify that this zone is a very key level on the chart, so we can use that information to risk off of it. And then we know that there is bullish pressure coming to the upside here, and we know that on the smaller time frame, on the 1 hour, there is a zone of resistance that is pushing the price, squeezing it closer to the key level of support there. So that's a key level of support, and then we see the price making lower highs, pushing the price below the zone. We see 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch, and then we see a push above the zone, validation of a new level of support, and that is where I entered. I was wanting to get as close to this support as possible, but then also have validation that I'm going to be making a potential new high to start the higher high and higher low process. And the way that I wanted to validate it is for me to break the trend line that was connecting the lower highs and also validate it as a new level of support. And that's exactly what happened right here. We got an initial rejection, we pushed above it, we retested as a new zone of support, and once we got that green candle on the hour chart to close, then that gives me enough confirmation and enough confidence in my setup in order to actually take it. And that's exactly what happened, and that's where we currently are right now. Okay. On the 4 hour, let's look at how many validations we got on the 4 hour and the amount of bullish injections or the buy pressure to come into the market. So initially we got our first one right there, and then we got our second one, and then we got our third one, and that's where I entered, where we got 3 injections of buy volume on the 4 hour chart. We see 3 strong pushes of buy volume, and that for me is a good enough indication that there's going to be buy pressure coming and pushing the price up above our key little minor support. But then also looking at the fact that we just bounced off 3 times on a key level on the chart that we've identified, starting from the daily chart working down into the smaller time frame. So we're not using minor levels to risk off of, we're using major key levels on the chart to assess how probable the trade will be by going in either the opposite direction or in the same direction, depending on how you want to trade the particular setup. But look at the bigger overarching key levels of demand and supply. That's definitely a great tip to go off of. So now that we've discussed Tron, the final is going to be EOS. Just taking a quick look at BTC, it's looking pretty good. That candle closed basically right at the open, showing me that there's an indecision in the market, and the next candle over is now looking pretty darn bullish. We still got a lot of time before it closes, obviously, but overall it's looking pretty decent for our trades. So EOS is the final one that we're going to discuss. This is a very nice pattern. It's just been making key levels of support bounces and breaking key levels of resistance. Let's go back to the 4-hour chart and discuss what we're able to see. Even on the daily, this for me is a very A+, very good solid flow trade, and we'll discuss why. So we got a key descending level of resistance, pushing the price down, and then we saw a little minor level of resistance before we broke, retested on the daily chart before making our first major impulse move to the upside. Now that we know that we're in a major impulse move and we're in a bullish trend, we then look for long opportunities. Even looking at the daily chart, let's see what we can identify right here. So if we just extend this out a little bit further, we can see it was a key level of resistance all along here, but we're just using it within this minor zone. So we got a push to the upside, and then we created a key level of resistance. We had a nice consolidation, a correction back down to a major level of support identified in the previous historic price action. And then we got our second impulse move, breaking the previous high, closing above it. We got a pullback, validating the previously broken resistance as a new level of support. And then we're trying to look to enter before the next impulse push. So that is an overarching analysis for this current pair. So let's talk about flow on the 4-hour now that we've discussed the overarching structure of the price action. So we're looking for a push, pullback, push, pullback, push. That's exactly what we're looking for in this current situation. So we got our initial push to create a key level of resistance on a chart. We don't see the candles close above this area. So we got a push initially. We are holding a resistance. We got a nice correction, holding a new level of support. And then we're looking for that next wave of buyers to push us to make a higher high. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We got a push, breaking and holding above our previous level of resistance. We see that right there. And then we are holding not once, but we see 1, 2, 3 holds on the 4-hour chart. We see 3 points where there is buy injection, there is bullish injection, pushing the price, keeping it above our previous level of resistance. That for me is a really good sign that bulls are going to be continuing to push the price further. Once we see the price break the little minor consolidation right here above the previous resistance, we're definitely looking to potentially long. We're very interested when it breaks this minor consolidation, because then we know that the bulls have taken charts yet again, holding on to the previous level of support, previous level of resistance, new level of support. Now taking it to the entry time frame, the 1-hour. We wanted double confirmation before we saw the price fully continue to the upside, and we wanted to see 2 zones where it got validated, and that's exactly what we saw. So now that we understand this minor level, we can discuss our exact entry parameters. So this is a tight consolidation on the 4-hour. We see that a little bit more clear on the 1-hour. We see the price bouncing from resistance to support. We see 1 key touch, 2 key touch, 3 key touches on the support, giving us a really good sign that bulls are present in the market. Once we got a break above our resistance, we can see that right here. Excuse me, just gonna get some water. So once we got the price to break above the resistance, we wanted 2 confirmations that there's going to be buy pressure. This is the first one right here, and this is the second one right here. Once we saw bearish momentum, and then it get halted with the bulls signaling that there's buy pressure at this zone twice, 1, 2, and then when this candle closed, then we're thinking, okay, there's bullish pressure here. We've broken a fresh resistance. We've held it for a support twice. For me, that is a pretty good probability that it will continue, because we've been breaking resistances, holding supports, breaking resistances, and holding supports. So we're in a bullish fashion where we're breaking resistances, holding supports. We're looking pretty good. There's a lot of bulls coming in, pushing the price up. So overall, that's why I'm looking to long at this current price at this current time. So hopefully you guys and girls got an understanding of why we were looking to long where we were. There is a lot that goes into each entry, and like always, we're looking for high probability situations. They may not always play out exactly the way you intend, or definitely not, but you always have to have a plan. And if you entered here and it breaks instantly down because BTC fell and this wick just closed here, that happens. You have to be all right with losing, failing, not being right as a trader. That's just the way it goes. But the number one thing is to be able to understand that it's a game of probabilities. You have to look at your trades in a set, not a single trade by trade case. So what I'm also saying is it's really psychologically challenging to become a trader and to try to trade if you are looking at each trade thinking you have an edge on that particular exact trade, and you don't. You can't say for certainty that you have an edge in that exact trade. You can say you have an edge against a pattern. So if you do it, let's say 20 times, you have an edge and you'll make money. But for a single trade, you cannot say that you have an edge, because one person market selling or market buying a ton into or exiting the market, your trade will be invalidated because a big buyer or a big seller can move the market. But over time, with enough practice, you'll be able to attain an edge with a sample size of, let's say, 20 to 25 trades. And that's something that I've definitely had a hard time grasping looking back. But over time, you'll definitely have the ability to kind of not give a crap out of or for any one trade, because you know that over time you will be able to make that back. But it's definitely a psychological challenge at the start for sure. So hopefully you got something out of this little market analysis, just going over the trades that we're currently in, not taking action until we see the right confirmations. Binance Coin will be my next trade, I think, my next hedge, if the price does actually get rejected off this zone. But things are looking good right now. There's nothing to do other than patiently wait. I have my stop losses set. I got my take profits set. I'm just going to patiently wait, not do anything, wait until if BNB actually does start to look like it's breaking down. I don't really want to enter short at the highs right here, because for me, I'd like to see confirmation of a break in support, hold in resistance, shift in market sentiment, shift in market direction, and market trend by seeing those lower highs and lower lows instead of trying to guess where the top is, because that definitely for me is not enough of a probability to enter for a short. So overall, that's my outlook for the market. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, anything in between, we'd love to hear them. Comment in the comment section below, and we'll be sure to answer any of the questions that deserve an answer, basically. So I hope everyone has a good rest of the week. I guess it's only Friday left, so I hope you guys have a good rest of a weekend. Definitely rest up for the great upcoming week ahead. January is done. It's on to February for the next week. So it's an exciting time. BTC looks strong at this point, even then, with the massive 30% move from the start of 2020. Overall, market sentiment is bullish, and I'm going to trade as such while still using hedges from time to time to try to mitigate or minimize risk. You can never completely mitigate it, but try to minimize risk for the downside potential moves if they do occur. So that's the analysis for today, and I hope you enjoy.